How should you write gardening lesson plans and how should you not? I'm Leila Mireskandari, your host, and this is episode number 33 of the School Gardens with Ease podcast. Today I will focus on lesson planning for a garden. If you've been listening and following for a while, you'd know that a school garden should be grown by the students, led by the teachers, and only supported by parents, admins, and custodians from the sidelines. If you're new to my world, you might still be thinking that school gardens need parent volunteers or time outside class time. In that case, please go and listen to the previous episodes where I explained why that approach will fail and why student powered, teacher led school gardens are the only way to go. That's the base of everything I stand for, including my Oasis suite of done for you programs, everything I advise in my consultations, everything I teach teachers and parents. It's essentially the base of it all. So, if that's the way it must be, and it is, that means that those school gardens will be done during class time and integrated thoroughly into the curriculum. And not only, the science curriculum that everybody thinks of right away, all the curriculum. I mean, language arts, STEM, STEAM, math, science, obviously, social studies, history, geography, health, community, indigenous studies, environmental stewardship, you name it. And if these school gardens are to be designed, built, grown, harvested, and maintained by the students while they learn all that good stuff, it only makes sense that the teachers need lesson plans for it. So, lesson plans are non negotiable. And yes, I have them for you. My Oasis programs are exactly those. Now, before you roll your eyes and say, of course, you'd say that because you want to sell us your programs, you know what? I invite you to quit listening, go and build a parent led community garden on school grounds outside of class time. Go ahead and do that for one season. Just one season, nothing longer than that, just one season this year. Try it. I know you'll be back and then you will be listening, and not just with your ears, but also with all of your bones. You'll be listening. Sorry for being harsh. Tough love, my friend. Some people just need to learn the hard way, and even though it breaks my heart to watch you do that, if you insist, go for it. There's nothing I can do about that. If you're still listening, you're still here, shall we finally get down to writing those lesson plans? Because they're non negotiable. Here's how you shouldn't be doing it, which is a very common mistake that I actually see, especially in the schools that I have worked with around me. It happens a lot. And that is trying to find or write lesson plans that teach your curriculum topics and subjects, one by one, sporadically, with gardening activities. For example, you need to teach about water cycle in your science curriculum, or you need to, teach about data management in your math curriculum, or you need to build vocabulary for language, whatever. And you want to teach those in a hands-on way that increases engagement and it's fun and exciting for your students. And since all those topics could relate to growing food, you bring seeds, soil, pots to your classroom and grow something together to build vocabulary and to show them how water works with plants, and then spring off of that into water cycle. I don't know, talk about soil, for your science curriculum, or, measure plants growth for your math curriculum, etc. So far, so good, right? And let's assume the best case scenario. Let's assume that the seeds you grew, they grow really well. Now what? Did you plant them at the wrong time of the year, maybe? Now they grew tall and there's nowhere for them to go because it's snowing outside, even if your timing was right. Did you think where those plants are supposed to go? What's gonna happen to them? Are you gonna just send them home with the students to their inevitable demise, to shrivel up and dry in the corner of your students' room? Is that what responsible adults do? What are you actually teaching your students after that the science lesson or language lesson is done? That it's okay to sacrifice plant life for science and education? Isn't that the attitude that got the earth into this horrible situation that it is now in the first place? If your school has a garden and your timing was not awful, are you planning to just stick those into the garden outside and let them die of thirst in a week? Do you now have a maintenance problem on your hands? That's taking a lot of time and energy and all of that with no further educational benefits for your students? Are you not desperate looking for parents to come and keep those plants alive in summertime? What was the plan? And again, that's assuming your seeds grew very well, and that's, not guaranteed, obviously, because it depends on how you did them. The issue is your plan for gardening activities started with your curriculum needs. I understand why you would do that, okay? But this approach does not grow you a school garden. Teachers start with their curriculum because that's what your focus is, and that's completely normal. It's natural. That's what you do with any other hands on activity you bring to your classroom. No shame in that. You can do that with a cooking activity because that's a one off thing. But gardens need more to thrive. Here's how you should do it. Start with the idea of growing the food garden first. Forget for a second your curriculum. I promise that we will get back to it. But let's start with growing the garden idea. What are all the tasks that you need to do to grow a garden? This could be an indoor garden, it could be an outdoor garden. It doesn't matter what type of garden it is. Any type of garden needs a series of timely, consistent chores to be done for it to be strong and, produce food nicely. Now, let me list them for you right here, right now. Take a pen and paper, take notes. You need first to grow a classroom garden, from seed, and then transplant those seedlings into a garden outside if you want an outdoor garden, because you don't have to have an outdoor garden. A classroom garden is plenty for education. Even if you live in a warmer climate and are not worried about frost, and many of the seeds that we love, like tomatoes, they're better off if you start them indoors first before you stick them in the ground. So first step is to grow a classroom garden, a seedling garden indoors. To do that, here is the list of tasks you need to do. Number 1, select your seeds. I have that list for you. It's a free guide. It's in the show notes. Number 2, determine the timing of those seeds according to your gardening zone. I can't give you that. Every gardening zone is different. Go to growveg.com and use their free trial period for their garden planner. Number 3, put your selected seeds on your class schedule according to that timing that you got from growveg.com. For example, if you are growing 20 different seeds, let's say, they usually spread throughout 10 weeks. Don't schedule a one-time thing, a one-time session or two-time sessions, and grow them all at once, because March is way too early for pumpkins and May is way too late for tomatoes. So put them on the schedule. Number 4, learn my recommended technique of growing seedlings in schools with a sub-irrigated system that your students will build with very inexpensive material. The link to that guide, which you can get for a few dollars, is also in the show notes. Now, let me tell you something. This guide is essentially one of the main pillars of my paid programs. I'm not kidding. So this is a very invaluable guide. Don't get stingy over a few dollars. Go get the guide. Now, at this point, you know your seeds, your timing, and the how to grow them into seedlings. Number 5, write yourself a step-by-step guide to follow and run the seedling growing activity. You need to know how you're running that in your classroom, how you're working with your students to do that, and what supplies you need. Number 6, order those supplies. Now, up until now, you have somewhat of a plan for your classroom garden. Don't get too proud yet. You're not done yet. Bear with me, okay? Because you still don't have the curriculum connected lesson plans that I am babbling about from the start of this episode. And you need that, because those 10, 15, 20 hours of gardening activities that you need to do to grow those seeds, you'll be using your class time, and obviously it should serve your curriculum. You can't just cut time out of your math and science and language and do something completely unrelated. You didn't have enough time for those in the first place already, remember? And not just that, the whole purpose of an educational garden is, surprise, surprise, education. We're not growing food just for the sake of growing food. And even though some could argue that that would already be an amazing cause to grow food, and it would be, I'm not arguing with that, but that's not enough. This is not a community garden. It's a school garden. It's an educational garden. Education has to be at the center of it all. So obviously, the next step is to connect the growing activity to your curriculum everywhere and write those lesson plans for it. But let's put aside those 6 steps of growing a classroom garden for a second, and let's also talk about the steps you need to do to grow an outdoor garden if you want an outdoor school garden. So, first of all, I strongly believe that you should still start with seeds. So, please don't plan to buy seedlings and stick them in the garden and just call that an educational garden. Because where's the education in that? If you're teaching your students how to grow food, you have to start with seeds because growing food starts with growing seeds. So, that's important, okay? And if you're starting with seeds, most our beloved plants, as I mentioned before, you need to start them indoors, even if you are living in a warm climate and are not worried about frost. So you'll have to start a classroom seedling garden regardless of eventually planting outside or not. Okay. So, in other words, first step to growing an outdoor school garden is to grow a classroom garden, and you have the steps for that. But obviously, there's more to an outdoor garden than just plants. So, number two would be you have to design the garden because I promise you, you don't want a conventional garden. You want a garden that is water conserving, because remember those summer maintenances that everybody's worried about, and low maintenance, okay? And that needs design. Number three, build the garden. A quick reminder here, very important about the design and building that everybody forgets. Don't forget this. I don't know why everybody forgets this when it comes to design and building the garden. It's all going to be done by your students. Yes, the designing and building also. They will learn a ton and they will have the time of their lives doing this. Okay? Number four, determine, draft, draw, whatever you want to call it, a proper plant placement for your garden that you just designed with your students. Okay, meaning you gotta know what's gonna go where in the garden, because I promise you, you want a polyculture, diverse garden that looks lush, beautiful, and also produces crazy amounts of food. Who doesn't love that? And plant placement matters for that a lot. Okay, number five, grow, I mean, sow seeds into the garden because it's an outdoor garden and some seeds need to be directly sown in the garden. There are some that need to be started indoors and there are some that need to be sown in the garden. Number six, harden off and transplant those seedlings that you grew in your classroom garden into the garden. And if you haven't heard about this phrase, hardening off, don't worry. It simply means getting those spoiled plants that were indoors used to the climate outside. That's what it is. Just Google it up and you'll know what to do. Number seven, water the garden every day. You know that. You have to put that in the schedule for your students to do. Number eight, harvest the short maturing food from the garden at the end of the school year. And you gotta have some, fun with that. Some fun plans like making salads, smoothies, I don't know, things like that. Number nine, plan and arrange for the community to keep the garden during the summer, water it and stuff like that. So you can come back next year to a thriving garden and harvest more food and seed safe. And that's it. That's the list of tasks that you need to do. Now, if you put that list of tasks in front of you, okay, you will quickly realize that you and your students will need to be there for this garden for weeks and weeks and weeks. Now, before you get intimidated and quit on me right away, I would like to remind you that that does not take a lot of hard work. What it does take is a good plan. I cannot emphasize this enough. Don't look at that list and be intimidated. Yes, if you were to, do all of that by yourself as a one person, that would have taken a lot of hard work and personal time sacrifice. And if you were going to make it happen by recruiting parent volunteers and organizing them and, planning all of that and making sure they do their work, yes, that would have been taking up a lot of hard work and sacrifice of your personal time and the parents' personal time and all of that. But that's not how you're going to be doing it, remember? Do not make the mistake of underestimating the collective power of your students. They can get so much done in one well-planned, well-instructed instructional hour that it will blow your minds off to the moon. Because prior to COVID, when me and my facilitators were going to local schools and running these Oasis programs, I have seen so many teachers' jaws drop that I have lost count. I promise you, you are underestimating your students. I promise you that. All it takes is a good plan. I'm not saying putting that plan together is easy. That's not what I'm saying. You need help with that. I understand that. Hence this podcast, hence all the guides that I give you, hence, ultimately my done for you Oasis programs, all of that is to help you. Okay. What I am saying is you need to have those lesson plans. Now, you either have to write them or you have to grab them off of me. because I hate to break it to you, and I hate this situation actually. I'm the only one that has them. So, again, the link to the Oasis programs is in the show notes. Okay, let's get back to the task at hand. Now that you have a complete list of what you need to do and an overall plan of what you need to get done by your with your students to have this garden, exist and thrive, you need to write those lesson plans so that you can teach math and science and language and health and arts and all that good stuff while do it hands-on in this garden that your students will design and build and grow and maintain and harvest from. Now, don't worry, I will get into the details of how to do that, this second part, in the next episode. Is it easier to just get those done for you Oasis programs off of my hands? Of course, it's easier to do that. Go grab them. Again, the link is in the show notes. If you want to do this yourself, if you have the drive, the time, the energy, and are up for a few years of trial and error, I am not gonna gatekeep, okay? I will tell you how to do that exactly with details in the next episode.